Hello, and welcome to the Thinking Elixir podcast, where we cover the news of the community and learn from each other. My name is Mark Erickson.
And I'm David Bernheisel.
Let's jump into the news. First up, the Erlang OTP team announced that the Erlang OTP project is now compliant with OpenChain ISO IEC 5230. That's exciting, right? Like all those letters and numbers.
Someone's certified.
Yes. So what that is, it's the international standard for open source license compliance. So the OTP team shared that their goal for 2025 is to enhance community infrastructure, processes, and tooling to meet the latest industry standards for supply chain security and cybersecurity. So this is part of OpenChain. So this is all under the Linux Foundation with their set of projects. OpenChain is really about software supply chain. By license control and management and being predetermined to be compliant, then it just makes it check a lot of boxes for different companies who can say, oh yes, we're using something that already meets this standard. And so it becomes available as an option more easily. So the whole supply chain thing is it's all about being quicker, more efficient, and more effective.
I wonder what that means for a hex. Like what was involved with hex here? Because if it's part of the supply chain, like what I think, maybe it's not part of like the specific certification, but I know that domain involves a thing called the software bill of materials. So the BOM or the SPOM. And there's, at least from what I recall, like at least a couple of years ago, I don't know if it was official or not, but there were several like formats for expressing all of the licenses that are used by your software. And so what that meant is that all of the package managers and all of the whole publishing, of your package like process, aka Hex mostly in our case, right, has to have like standardized ways to reliably know what license your package is under. All of the apps out there that are using your incredible library list their big old tree of licenses. They can see like a unique list of all the ones that they are beholden to. Which I don't know if you've ever done this before, but if you ever go to your smart TV and you go into like the about area that no one ever goes to, and then there's like
licenses,
yes, there's like a button there that says licenses. Like Android has it as well. I'm sure iOS as well. But a lot of stuff is built on open source, and you have to disclose the licenses for those. In those devices. There's more rules than I know about, but it's pretty common to see that. So that's what I think, maybe not that specific certification, but like that's the area that this is talking about, which is pretty cool, which is pretty amazing, because that's one of those check boxes that like enterprise companies, first of all, maybe you don't care about enterprise companies. I don't know if I do, but like that's one of those like barriers of adoption of any kind of language and ecosystem is, do they have that checkbox? Can you tell me reliably all the licenses that are being used so that I don't get sued?
Yep. Yeah. So one of the interesting things that I learned in looking at this was that back since OTP 18, so currently we're on OTP 27, right? So back in OTP 18, they changed the license of the Erlang OTP project to be under the Apache license 2.0. So previous to that, it was under a derivative of the Mozilla public license. Part of it, of getting the certification, is, okay, that you're on a certain license that is already easily pre-approved. And I'm sure there was more they had to do to be able to meet this requirement. But yeah, I think it's awesome because it just lowers the bar for big companies that are probably maybe dealing with governments or something like that to just have an easier option of saying, yes, we're able to pull in OTP.
Mm-hmm. Back when we were talking to Alistair Woodman a long time ago, we'll link to that podcast episode. Alistair Woodman, if I'm getting it correct, he's the chair of the Erlang Ecosystem Foundation, and I think he alluded to some of these kinds of things that they were working towards. So if you want some context, maybe go back and listen to that episode. All right. Well, hey, next up, Hugo Barahona shared that the Elixir Patterns book that he's been working on with Alex Koutmos has been released. Yay! So we got a link to it. It's elixirpatterns.dev. couple of posts that they post on social. If you're curious about this, the title is called Elixir Patterns. So you might imagine what it might be about. It's about Elixir. Great. But it's also about patterns that you might see, common patterns that you might see in Elixir. So one of the examples in there might be like how to do like a global process or something like that in Elixir. I don't actually know if that's in the book, but it's one of those common patterns you might come across. Think of it like kind of like cookbooks or recipes, but not just a cookbook. If you're curious about that kind of stuff, there is a free sample of the first 2 chapters that can be emailed you if you want to see more. Another cool thing about this book that they released is that it includes access to all the accompanying live books, right? So this is not just a static PDF or EPUB. It's all the interactive stuff that you can actually get in there and piddle around with it too. So that makes a big difference, I think. That's learning by practicing, I think, is going to make a big difference. So the subtitle for the book is The Essential Beam Handbook for the Busy Developer. Yes. So they had a live stream that you can watch where they talk about all sorts of things in the book. I didn't watch the whole thing. It's an hour long. But we got links to all these resources in our show notes. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube on your own as well. But that's it. Yeah. Elixir Patterns book is now released. Go check it out.
Awesome. And next up, Paraxial.io performed a security audit of OpenWeb and OpenPro. So we got a link to the blog post on the Paraxial website. So Paraxial.io is an Elixir-focused security company, and they performed a pen test of the 2 projects. You know, since OpenWeb has gone free and open source, more people are likely to be using it and deploying it that may have not been doing it before. So it's really nice to have this extra assurance and deeper look at the security of the project. So, okay, the big question is, all right, well, did he find anything? And the answer is no critical security vulnerabilities were detected. Woohoo! That's great.
Yay.
Minor issues were promptly addressed, and the overall design was determined to be solid from a security perspective. Quoting from the Paraxial blog post about this, it says, "The audit revealed a well-architected design with minimal risk for end users. Data processed by OpenPro is never sent to a third-party server, which is the key design decision that makes the system secure. The libraries are also designed to minimize the risk of new vulnerabilities being introduced via careful handling of external user input. Through this audit, the OpenPro team, Parker and Shannon Selbert, have shown a clear commitment to data privacy and security." I just think it's great. You know, having an external review reassure us of what a lot of us believed anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's high quality software.
Thanks for confirming my bias.
Yes. But sometimes, again, it comes back to certifications. Like if you're in the education space, healthcare space, anything like that, you have all these extra certifications, and being able to say, hey, one of our really important dependencies had a recent security audit and it's all good. That's great.
Tell that to your boss, you know? Yep. All good. I posted about it as well. It's solid security wise and otherwise. So just a good choice. Open is worth it, especially now. And OpenPro, I think, is also worth it. Even for that, like one extra feature, I'm going to call it out. It's like Open Workflows is pretty killer. You don't get that with Open Normal or Open Regular, Open Vanilla. I don't know. Yeah, workflows is essentially, think Broadway, where you can have like these kind of like fanning in and fanning out and waiting on, you know, previous jobs and that kind of stuff. You can dynamically add, you know, jobs to the workflow. I think something along those lines. But yeah, Open Pro includes things like that. It's very much worth the license. We've talked about it a lot of times before, back when like OpenWeb was part of the paid package, and that was like the killer thing that like I don't really need the rest of Open. I just want to see my jobs, you know. Well, now you can get that, you know, for free, but I just want to reiterate that paying for OpenPro is still worth it, very much worth it. Anyway, sorry, that's kind of an aside from the pen test, but Open is definitely worth it. That's the point.
Yep.
All right. Next up, we got a reminder that the Alchemy Conf is happening in Braga. I hope I'm saying this right. Braga, Portugal, on April the 2nd through the 3rd. So a 2-day conference. It looks like they have several events going on there. So you can see those events at alchemyconf.com. Good friend of the show, Hugo, already mentioned earlier, Hugo Baruna shared that he will be speaking there about Livebook. Of course he is. And the internals of Livebook teams. So pretty nice. And the cost at time of recording is 300 euros, which in conference costs, that ain't too bad. And it's in a beautiful theater, if I recall, in Braga, Portugal. So definitely worth it.
And last up, stepping outside of the Elixir specific domain into tooling, right? So we want to talk about ASDF. It's a version manager, and I think really one of its original purposes was to help deliver Elixir and Erlang. And then they branched out from there into Ruby and Node and all these other things. But really, it's like kind of their core thing has always been Elixir and Erlang. So it's a often used tool in our community. Well, what happened was they had a major update to version 0.16. So previously 0.15, they went to a tiny little bump, 0.16, and it's completely different. Breaking changes, major rewrite, went from bash scripts to a Golang binary.
Yep.
All the arguments changed, everything. I love semantic versioning. So how I discovered this was recently I picked up a laptop that I hadn't used for a little while, and I was getting everything updated so I could have projects and everything as I went on a trip so I could still be productive. And I needed to update my Erlang and OTP versions. And I thought, oh, while I'm at it, I'll just update ASDF to make sure the plugins are all updated and everything. Well, as soon as I did that, I quickly learned that everything broke. That was me going to 0.16.0. And so I quickly looked around and looked at the blog and saw, oh, there's been a major rewrite. Oh, all the commands are different. Like where they were hyphenated before, it's different.
Just enough to throw you off. You're like, I think my muscle memory was plug-in dash update. Yeah.
Yeah. So really what I ended up doing, because at the moment I just need it to work. So just a heads up, there is a branch of the project that you can pull down and everything that is on the 0.15 version of it. So you can stay on that one temporarily while you're waiting for, whatever else, time you need to be able to get that updated. But just want to put that on everyone's radar. If you haven't noticed it yet, that is a big change. And thankfully, David, you spotted that there was a blog post written up about this too. And I think their installation and upgrade guides have been updated since I did it, because it went from 0.16 to 0.16.1 pretty quickly. But not quickly enough for me.
You may have just gotten it on the day of.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Not to say that they're slow and for these bug fixes. It looks like they were really quick about it, but
yep.
you just got caught in the middle there.
Yep.
Yeah, the blog post is written by Trevor Brown, who is the creator of ASDF. So yeah, he goes into like the whys, the hows. We joke about the semantic versioning, like how, I don't know, from 0.15 to 0.16, like everything's different. But not 1.0. This is how long? I need to look this up. But ASDF has been out for a long time. It's going to feel like what did we figure out? Like with Phoenix Live View, it was like 5 years or something before. Yeah, but it didn't feel like 5 years. And ASDF, right, I'm pretty sure was out way before LiveView, and it's still not 1.0.
It's true. It was out before. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, not that it needs to go to 1.0. Like who really cares? But just funny to think about.
Yeah. But from what I was reading, the plugins supposedly continue to work as is. So there's not breaking changes on any of those. They just still add the ability to support those different languages. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder how they do that.
I have no idea. I was like, I expected them all to be broken too.
Yeah.
But so apparently they're still working. So anyway, just want to put it on your radar. If you haven't been caught by that, just heads up. That new version is there, and it may change your workflow a little bit.
Not about ASDF, but I think a common alternative that I would recommend is don't use ASDF. Not that it's a bad thing. It's a great tool. I just find that, I don't know, I've been infrastructure focused for like a little bit lately. And if you're deploying your app at all, anywhere, like okay. If it's a library, you're not going to be deploying it, I guess, right? But if it's an app and you typically control your things with ASDF, you're going to be deploying your app somewhere. And modern practices are today to do it with containers.
Right. So you're like developing out of a container that has the version in the container.
I would go that way. Yes. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows over there, but I would take that trade-off, I think. I have, but yeah, I would take that trade-off to, and by inside it, okay, so there's good way. All right, maybe we'll save this for another episode, all the details, but there's good ways and bad ways. There's good ways and in-depth ways to do Docker, based development. So you can do your typical like production for focused Docker container where everything's done in layers and compiled and static, basically inside of the container. You build your mix release and yada, yada, yada. That's not what I'm talking about for developing, right? So for developing, you kind of do like your first thing where you're from Ubuntu, or whatever your base system is. But then you just mount your volume, like your app volume, like right in there. And that's kind of it. Now, the Here Be Dragons part of this is you kind of got to go into the depths of like mix and depths and making sure that caching doesn't clobber things that might be local to your system. So, like, for example, if you're a Phoenix app, you have ESBuild and Tailwind likely, right? So you got those watchers, and anything that builds natively, has to build native to whatever that OS that you're running on. And so it detects what OS you're on, it downloads the correct binaries, and it runs those binaries. And so if you don't do the volume mounting things quite right, your Linux things are going to clobber your Mac things, for example, your Windows things. Things can get real weird. And if you want to know a whole lot more about that, well, then you can come talk to me. But I instead of ASDF, I think because ASDF is just, it's not that it can't do things like Postgres and Redis, because there's plugins that do that too. But Docker is just a lot fuller of a solution for like the entire execution environment.
Honestly, a lot of that comes down to how complex the environment is, how many extra binaries, like if you're using, this is the image magic version that we really depend on, and it's for this version of Ubuntu, that kind of stuff. That's where it really is helpful. But if you're not getting into all of that stuff, then you're adding extra complexity of like, well, I'm using Visual Studio Code and it can't compile. It's like I have to be able to still make it so it can run the Elixir tools and things like that on because that's not in the container. So I'm still having to manage my versions at some level, right? So basically, we got you covered. We got a foot in each camp. So we're with you. We got your back.
We know. Yeah, we know. Yeah, that reminds me. Yeah, so there's the 3 LSPs out there, right? You got Elixir LSP, which is the OG. I think that compiles like alongside your project. So that's where, versions matter a lot more. But Lexical and Next, I believe they are separate compilations altogether, but they network into your running app, right? And so that's how it stays separate, and the theory being that it would be a lot more stable, that way. Not that matters much longer, because we're going to have a new combined effort of all three of those into one Captain Planet of a LSP.
I love it.
Yeah, plenty of heart in there. So
all right. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us next time on Thinking Elixir.